For India's best podcasts and audio stories, listen to Earshot.in or download the Earshot app.
I have a dream that my 4 little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. I have a dream today.
These were excerpts from one of the most historic speeches ever delivered. On 28 August 1963, Martin Luther King Jr., the Gandhi of America, gave this speech. This was followed by the famous March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom. The organizers had expected a crowd of about 100,000, but 200,000 people turned up, pressing for equal rights for Black Americans, who also made a majority of the numbers. Although a substantial number of whites joined the march in a show of empathy towards the till then underprivileged community, Martin Luther King Jr. was leading the march, of course. Martin Luther King Jr. used to be an American Baptist minister, an activist who became the most visible spokesperson and leader in the American civil rights movement from 1955 until his assassination in 1968. The Black Americans had actually been brought as slaves 400-odd years ago. They were bought and sold in markets, showing that their status was like that of domesticated animals. They would work as helps at the households of white Americans. Not only were they looked down upon, but were also brutalized, the way a bad pet owner treats his pets. While Abraham Lincoln had ended slavery in the US about a century ago, the whites' old habits died hard as they continued to discriminate against the blacks and persecute them. The opportunities for education and employment for the tortured race were few and far between. They did not enjoy equal rights either at public places or in government jobs. They were practically second-grade citizens of the country. In that era, the front rows of seats used to be reserved for the whites, and the blacks dared not flout this rule, even on occasions when they lay vacant. And at times when a bus would be crowded, the black occupants had to disembark every time a white man or woman had to get into the bus. They were allowed back in only after all white passengers had comfortably occupied the seats. But on 1st December 1955, a black woman called Rosa Parks refused to vacate the seat she was occupying. She was heavily penalized. The incident provoked Martin Luther King Jr. to call for the Montgomery bus boycott. Responding to the leader's call, the blacks boycotted buses for travel altogether. Kicking off the campaign, Martin Luther King Jr. had said that no kind of discrimination would henceforth be tolerated during bus travels.
That was the day that we started a bus protest which literally electrified the nation. And that was the day when we decided that we were not going to take segregated buses any longer.
Not only did the blacks boycott buses, but they also carried placards that read, "We are humans too." The Martin Luther King Jr. triggered movement turned violent in due course, although he had insisted he would walk the path shown by Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi of India, the path of non-violence. He urged his followers to hate the discriminatory regime rather than the whites who discriminated. He opposed the racist and color discriminatory policies and laws of the US as a matter of principle. With King's endorsement, Wachtell, Jones, and another New York lawyer, Theodore W. Keel, founded the Gandhi Society for Human Rights and pressed for equal rights for the blacks. King would insist that America could not be a first-class country until it believes certain citizens were second-class. Under the heat of his movement, the Supreme Court of the US ordered an end to the discriminatory rules for bus travels. In the meantime, King kept organizing small and large-scale movements for an egalitarian American society, during which he was jailed quite a few times. King had by now become a leader. While he had won a battle, the road ahead was long and not easy. In this journey, the March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom was a milestone. It was during this march that King had delivered the famous "I Have a Dream" speech. On 12th April 1963, King and his activist associates had organized a demonstration and protest march against the racist policies of the Birmingham, Alabama city administration. The police tried to suppress the movement brutally. This time, therefore, the blacks had turned up in great strength, bringing along women and children to the march that had earlier only seen aged men participate. The Birmingham, Alabama demonstrations got wide coverage in the media. That the blacks were being discriminated against was a message that had reached far and wide. The then President John F. Kennedy announced that he would bring a new law in Congress. This was in fact the enactment the King was pressing for through his demonstrations that brought together the blacks and whites populations. A tragic incident followed the Washington March soon after. Kennedy was assassinated while going out with his wife on an off day in an open car. The assassin was himself murdered shortly thereafter. Among the conspiracy theories surrounding Kennedy's assassination is a theory that he was killed because of his support to the civil rights movement of blacks. However, even Kennedy's successor Lyndon B. Johnson was supportive of the cause. He brought in the promised civil rights law and also granted the blacks the adult franchise, the right to vote. The Time magazine declared King to be the Man of the Year in its January 1964 issue for successfully leading the civil rights movement the previous year. In 1964 again, King received the Nobel Peace Prize.
I accept the Nobel Prize for Peace at a moment when 22 million Negroes of the United States are engaged in a creative battle to end the long night of racial injustice.
Nobody had imagined that following in the footsteps of Gandhi would bring to King Gandhi's fate too. The hero in the eyes of the world had at the same time turned an eyesore for someone. Blinded by hate, James Earl Ray was counting days to see King eliminated from the face of the earth. In the next episode, Earshot will dive into how and why James Earl Ray killed Martin Luther King Jr.
For India's best podcasts and audio stories, listen to Earshot.in or download the Earshot app.
Earshot, here and now.